Hello. Try not to mind the background footage for the intro too much. I just decided to go on a baby EO for a stress test that Matt ended up hosting a couple of days ago. So, there's some good news that especially happened today. We ended up actually getting the trophies back on the official servers. But not just us getting trophies back. We got new trophies, which they ended up actually advertising to us a while ago. Things like Alberta's horns, Merigaya tail, T-Rex's skull, Tyrannotitan's foot, Lamb's crest, Anno's tail club. You get where I'm coming from. A bunch of new trophies to just spice up your home cave. And thankfully, the devs have made it so that juvies can now use trophies for growth yet again, but once you hit sub-adult, you will no longer be able to use your trophies for growth, instead just getting the mark reward that comes from them. The reason why they were moved in the first place is because a lot of megapacks were pretty much finding an exploit in order to just really, really quickly grow dinos, like, a dino at adult in like an hour maybe. And honestly, that really works out for me, that you can't use them to get back to adult after you die, because what's really the problem with doing like 5 raid quests in the first place? Instead, it's mainly just going to be the juvies who really care about trophies for growth, which means I have more reason to actually steal trophies from juvies now. Because that was like half the fun for me, was finding a juvie with a trophy and taking it because I'm on Rhamph and I'm a trophy thief. But either way, long story short, this video is going to be centered around the solo servers from the perspective of a Rhamph. Because obviously I'm going to play Rhamph, right? What else am I going to play? Something that actually has obvious and direct impact? No, you know me. I have some other footage of this EO session as well that I want to upload in the future, but for what you're about to watch, I had a lot of fun with it, and with all that out of the way, I hope you all enjoy. And so for this one, here we are in solo servers, and obviously as always, my first choice is always Rhamph. Now in normal officials, whenever I choose Rhamph, and I find something that can actually start plaguing, well, it's usually never solo, so maybe I'll have a slightly better chance in the solo servers. And the first thing I find here is a Hatzegopteryx that is attacking an Aloe. And so I have a choice to make. Do I want to start bothering the Aloe, or do I want to start bothering the Hatzegopteryx? And a Hatzegopteryx can hit me out of the air with AoE attacks and really just be a nuisance to me, whereas the Aloe I can just decide to disengage whenever I want. And so with that choice on the table, I'll decide to take the Hatzegopteryx, as I can end up pouncing it on the floor, and it won't be able to take off while it's being nom-nommed by this conch that was also in the area. The Hatz keeps trying to just make as much distance as they can, just in order to be able to take off before I end up actually just delatching, which ends up leaving them to just get face tanked by the Aloe and the conch. Luckily for me, they were able to notice that I was actually trying to help in getting that Hatz killed, and, well, I got my food and moved on. But not too far, as a few minutes after that little encounter right there, I ended up going over to the more central part of Drifang Canyon, and I noticed the same Aloe fighting, well, another Aloe and a baby Titan. And after watching the end of this mirror matchup, I decided to hop on a rock just to watch as this Aloe ends up running directly towards the baby Titan in order to finish off its bloodline. And blessing them with the reward of the bicycle Rhamph. As you can see, no one can ever take their eyes off it. And with that, I move on to another zone, and I'm thinking somewhere a bit more active. Maybe like Cedrus Forest. Now, I do find it funny that since the Metro TLC, where, the devs ended up changing the waystones around Mudflats and Twisted Forest and Wilemi a little bit, all of the traffic seems to have all gone towards Cedrus Forest. And yeah, while there is a lot of the player base that have just moved from Mudflats to Cedrus Forest, I at least prefer it over Mudflats just due to, well, just coverage and the terrain difference. There's far less modes of travel in order to just skip to this area in the first place, and it's a bit more central in terms of like map placement, so that means that it's less impactful on where you spawn after you die. As an example, the worst type of place to spawn is somewhere like Coastal Bluffs or maybe in Wilemi Forest if you want to head back to Cedrus Forest. And so I fly around, since I saw that the area was a hotspot, until I ended up hearing a bit of noise. In which, next to the upper pond of Cedrus Forest, I ended up spotting a Tyrannotitan fighting or trying to face tank a full AoE Anodonto. But that's not all that was in the area. There was also a Hatzegopteryx in the tree. I guess they were just enjoying the show. Along with the Aloe that was also in the area. And so I hopped down on the rock, just to watch the show and see how this all goes. Though I think we all know how this is gonna go. There's only really one way for this Titan to actually attack this Anno safely, and the Anno can just keep hitting with AoE, chipping down the Titan. While the Anno has maybe 60% of the health, this Titan is below 40%, and continually getting hit with more and more AoE smashes. And at this point, even the Hass decided to get a better seat. Not just to watch the show from a better spot, but also to be next to the majesty that is Dennis. And eventually, even a Metri ended up showing up to the area. But not just a Metri. There was also a Thalassadromius. And now here is where it actually starts to turn a little bit scary for me. Because as you all know who have played a decent amount of Rhamph since Thalassadromius' TLC, there is no way for a Rhamph to actually escape a good Thalassadromius player, other than just running to the ocean and diving really deep. And so what I'm doing here, just staying in the area and kind of baiting by making noise, I would say is playing with fire. As for this Thalassadromius, I'm the only thing here that it could reliably actually kill. And so, remember what I said earlier, that you can't really get away from a good Thal? Well, this is because most of the Thals are usually using barrel roll in order to do air combat, so the only way to actually escape them is on the ground. But guess what, if you're on the ground and you get spotted by Thal, then it also just chases you down and just bites you to death. Here, I ended up getting lucky and breaking line of sight and just staying on the ground and quiet in order to, well, just heal up. And after healing up a bunch of health, it was time to take off and crash into a tree. Like an absolute Dinkelberg. Now, back over where the pond is, the Anno and the Titan, well, they're still at it, though this is going at a snail's pace. Neither of them will ever kill each other, since the Anno can't catch the Titan, and the Titan cannot outdamage the Anno, or outtrade it, should I say. And clearly this Thal has got their head on a swivel, able to just notice when I'm getting close, even if I'm trying to be as quiet as possible. But I'll still test my luck dicing with death here, as, I hop on a little rock and try to make myself as visible as possible to the Thalassadromius. In which, as you're about to see, has actually worked to get them to fly over here, and as they're trying to land here, they end up taking a bit of collision damage. They ended up losing me among all the foliage underneath, and I ended up flying over to the spot where they were sat beforehand. Before then just getting their attention yet again, with my marvellous display. And now, stuff like this is one of my favourite parts of playing Rhamph. It's almost like playing Dead by Daylight Survivor in a way. You're kind of just immersed in not really being able to actually fight back against this one thing. All you can really do is just get lucky enough to run and hide from it. But since this entire thing seems to be going nowhere with the Anno and the Titan, and also the fact that the Thalassadromius is not wanting me in the area, I decide to move on towards the southern pond of Cedrus Forest, where all I really notice at first is that there are two Sarcos in the water defending it, and maybe hoping for a grab off of anything below 3000 weight, along with a subadult Barsboldia and the Mela Aloe that we end up seeing up towards the northern pond. There was a little bit of beef between the Sarcos and the Bars, but yeah, neither will ever really be able to finish the other off. Along with the fact that the Aloe decided that they would rather start attacking the Sarcos than attack the Bars, since Bars are absolutely terrifying right now. And this one decision that the Aloe made seems to have created a small little alliance in the area of the Barsboldia, the Alio, and the Aloe in the area, which was put to its first test as there was a subadult Rex that showed up to the area and decided to ambush the Alio. They got the first crushing bite on the Alio and decided to chase it and attempt to finish off that kill before it got away, but all the noise in the area seems to have stirred the attention of the Barsboldia to start coming. Now, might I say, this Barsboldia was absolutely relentless. I think they were just looking for beef, which is quite ironic, seeing as everyone calls Barsboldia a cow. And the Bars decided that they would chase this Rex all the way towards the home cave if they had enough stamina, which, unfortunately for them, they did not. Even with the Bars out of stamina though, the Rex ran all the way to the home cave and just entered. The Bars arrived near the home cave and decided to get a drink at the pond shortly after, in which the Rex was sitting outside the home cave trying to make sure that the coast was clear. Now, as for me, I haven't really done anything. I don't really need to do anything to have fun. To me, this is all just a show of just watching what players will do, in different circumstances. Like, as for this particular Rex, they seem to have learned that the home cave is the solution to all of life's problems. They can be safe there, log there if they want, and even try to wait out the timer in order to get a grab and fail. And so, here they've entered the cave again, and here's where I'm thinking, okay, I wasn't getting involved, I wasn't taking sides, I was just enjoying the show. But now you've involved me yourself, and so now it's my turn to have some fun. And so the Bars comes over, sticks their tail in the Rex's face, and does a couple of wiggles since the Rex is on home cave invulnerability buff, and then just walks away. But as for me, I'm going to drag this out a bit. I'm just going to stay in the area and wait for this Rex to maybe start walking away from the cave. And now here is where, as I said before, I get to have my fun, no matter how often they do a friendly call. And so, you know how this goes. After a couple of bucks, I hop off, get a bit of stamina, and hop right back on. And this'll continue until, one, they either head back towards the cave, or until something comes up to start hitting me. And thankfully, this is a solo server, and this Rex, well, doesn't seem to be one of those people in the solo server who actually just have a group. And so we continue. I hop back on, they decide to try and get a tail attack, they end up eventually heading into the water to see if that would maybe get me to detach, maybe like a leech, I don't know. But once I hop off to get a bit more stamina, they decide to run straight back to the cave in order to, well, from what I assume, just log out. They did end up coming out to the cave maybe every 30 seconds and going back in just to make sure that the coast was clear yet again. But, safe to say, I was keeping an eye on this, and I was just waiting. I guess you could say I was just being toxic and petty, as I home cave camped this Rex with Rhamph. But after 5 minutes of waiting here, and going in and out of the home cave debuff range, they just didn't come out of the home cave again. And so I decided to move on after grabbing a bite to eat. And so I ended up moving back towards the southern pond of Cedrus Forest, and everything else was still here. The Barsboldia, the Allosaurus, the Sarcos in the water, but also then the Thalassadromius that tried to attack me at the northern pond. Along with the Hats that was also up at the northern pond, with a Latin and another Allosaurus. There was still a bit of beef between the Barsboldia and the Sarcos in the water, or perhaps they were just in the mood for some beef. But either way, the status quo was clearly here, and the same as before that Rex ended up arriving, for maybe the next 5 minutes. That is, until, well, in the distance, there is a Rex walking, or should I say sneaking, or creeping towards the pond yet again. And it's the same Rex that I pretty much just home cave camped until I thought that they logged out. But they did have a slight trick up their sleeve. They're currently, well, mid-shed, or they've started to shed towards melanistic skin. And after all that plaguing at the cave, they are in need of a good meal from a good ambush. Though sadly for them, the Bars is still in the area. Though they're not going to let that stop them from attempting to ambush the Allo with a nice old crushing bite. And as they chase this Allo through the forest, trying to get any damage on the Allo as they can, this does set off the bars to, well, get into pursuit. Now, as for me, I've only just been in replay range in order to actually capture this in replay mode, but I hadn't actually seen the Rex in the first place. So seeing it here, this Rex being melanistic, I thought this was a completely different Rex, just being chased by the aloe and the bars and everything else that was there in the area. And so, as I'm crossing the water and I'm watching this Rex actually cross over the water as well, that is until, well, a Tylosaurus ends up showing up and just attacking them as they're halfway across. And here's where I started to feel a little bit sorry for them. That is really unfortunate. Chased off by a bars and aloe all at the same time, and then as you escape, you're getting attacked by this. I was perfectly ready to even just switch over to a buff build, a buffing Rhamph build, and just sit on this Rex, giving them damage buff and, reduced cooldowns for them to do their job better. Though that is until they decide to try and tail attack me. And fail, just like the grab earlier. And yet again, I do nothing and they try to hit me, so I say to myself, okay, it's my turn to have some fun. And you all know the whole shtick. I hop on, get a bunch of plagues stacked up and watch the strong grip counter until it runs out or has 1 second left. I run off to a tree, get a bunch of stamina, and then we do this all over again. But now here's where I notice that the server's going to restart in 3 minutes. And in the moment, I'm thinking, yeah, that's about a quarter of the Rex's hunger that I can plague off before the server restarts. And it seems that their only thought to deal with me is to try and stuff me in a wall, which never works. There was even a moment where they ended up just, well, sitting down while I was pounced. And, well, this went on for maybe a couple of seconds until I just decided to make them stand back up again. And so they bucked me off one more time, and while I'm getting stamina, they decide to run towards the water. And now here's where I'm starting to think that Rat Out might be pretty useful for getting the Tylo here. But a Tylo is not the only thing that a Rex would have to worry about. There's also been a Barsboldia that has been watching the entire time as I've been plaguing this Rex across the water. And after seeing that very Rex being pestered by a Rhamph crossing the water, it seems to have excited this Bars in order to get maybe a last-minute server kill. And so the Bars struts up, turns around and hits the Rex in the face with a sweep that does 110 damage at base without the thick skin. The Rex runs off, the Bars chases, before then the Rex runs into the water. But guess what's in the water? Of course! The Tylo! And so now at this point, the Rex has a lose-lose scenario of either die on land to the Bars or die in water to the Tylo. And the Rex ended up choosing land, as after the bone break ended up wearing off on the Rex, they decided to run straight inland. And you know how this is going to end. They get hit by the bar sweep and finished off. And as for the best part, I got a nice meal. All the Rex had to do is just not attack the Rhamph. The Rhamph will make you look like an easy target to other people for then to cause you more problems. And so here we are at the end. So, how is everyone actually enjoying the solo mode? I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on the solo mode of either, people being really disappointed that a lot of megapacks are actually still finding a way to actually get onto the servers, and I know the method they're using as well, but I'm not going to share that. And on the other hand, some people are actually enjoying it because, while it's not perfect that megapacks are finding a way to get on there, it's still increasing their odds of actually finding something they can deal with. Me personally, I think the thing that kind of annoys me most about it is that it's really just limited to Apex spam. The same as usual, same as before as normal officials. 90% of the player base on, solo servers are gonna be like 5-slot dinos. And me personally, I'm kinda lucky that most of those 5-slot dinos that make up the solo servers are very susceptible to being plagued by a Rhamph. So while the solo servers being 95%, Apex or 5-slot dinos is very handy for me, in particular on Rhamph, I could see the problem for anybody who likes playing anywhere from 1 to 3 slots, having you know, a problem of actually getting anything done to have their own fun. Especially when, you know, they're dealing with Titans, Rexes, Spinos, Eos, Ducks, Tylos. You get where I'm coming from. But I'm actually curious as to what your experiences have been, so let me know down in the comments. I have been wanting to get another video out sooner, but sadly it's been a mix of, one, procrastination, being hunya de lazy that I am, and also then just noise pollution doing voiceovers. It's such a pain in the ass. But, with all that out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye!